Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great pleasure to rise in support in the third reading of the Social Assistance Living Alone Payment Amendment Bill, sir. This bill is about making things simpler for our older folks, older New Zealanders, at a time when they suddenly find themselves alone after the death of a wife or a husband or a partner. Those are difficult times, sir. It replaces the living alone payment and the two current rates of New Zealand superannuation and veterans' pension with a new single living alone rate and a new single sharing accommodation rate. Previous speakers have also sort of talked about this, but the changes may seem very minor, but they will be significant for the people affected by them. The system needs simplifying, and the Social Assistance Living Alone Payment Amendment Bill will do just that, sir. At the moment, the living alone payment is a separate benefit, and it has to be applied for, and it has to be applied for within 28 days in order to get the payment backdated. This places unnecessary burden on older New Zealanders, particularly at a time of great loss to themselves. Often when they're in grieving mode, they may not be motivated to get up and perhaps go and apply for a supplement income that is available to them. They may not even be aware of it. And removing that 28-day time period will be very helpful for older folks in New Zealand. As I said, some older people may not even know that they may be entitled to the payment, creating unnecessary hardship and stress. We don't want single superannuitants and single veteran pensioners who are living alone to have to make a separate application for the extra payment that they are entitled to. This bill also means that superannuitants won't need to visit a work and income office to make that application, sir. This can be hard for some older New Zealanders, and we need to make the process a lot simpler. The new single living alone rate will be paid from the day that the superannuitant or veteran pensioner becomes eligible. It recognises that living alone means that you are not you, sir, but they are not able to share the cost of maintaining a household, and living costs are higher. A single superannuitant who has been granted a living alone payment receives $25.56 more each week after tax than a single superannuitant who is sharing accommodation. At the date of the enactment of the Social Assistance Living Alone Payment Amendment Bill, all recipients of the living alone payment will be transferred to the new single living alone rate of New Zealand superannuation or veterans' pension, and will be paid from the day people become eligible for it. So, opposition have actually talked a little bit about the definition of a dependent child, but the purpose of the bill is to amend the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Act of 2001 and the War Pensions Act of 1954 to update the definition, because different acts have different definition of what a dependent child really is. The amendment to the bill means that single superannuitants and veteran pensioners with dependent children will receive the new single living alone rate until the end of the calendar year, which the child turns 18. And as long as the child is at school or in training, it will also ensure a consistent definition of an 18-year-old dependent child across the social system. If the child remains in the household after he or she turns 18, the superannuitant will receive the new single sharing accommodation rate, sir. These changes will make it simpler and fairer for all superannuitants and single veteran pensioners who live alone. And this bill is another example of this national government simplifying processes. They may seem small changes, but our older New Zealanders, for them it will be very significant. We don't want them facing unnecessary difficulties in obtaining what they are rightfully entitled to, sir. And finally, I'd like to echo the House's congratulations to Roland. Happy birthday. And I'd like to wish all right across this House a very happy Easter. God bless you all.
Lole-Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. New Zealand First. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak on this bill. And not on behalf of Mike Sabin, but on behalf of New Zealand First. And New Zealand First has always done what it stands for, and that is putting New Zealanders first. Something that Mike Sapin has failed to do since arriving in this House. So this bill here before the House for the third reading to some extent does just that. It puts older New Zealanders first. And I believe it was Albert Einstein that said that knowledge is realizing that the street is one way, while wisdom, are you listening, Mike Sapin? Wisdom is looking in both directions anyway. So New Zealand First acknowledges that this bill recognises we need to guarantee our future generations, our future leaders, that they are well prepared in order for them to take up leaderships in the future, especially for our nations. But at the same time, there is also a need for us to ensure that those who have or had created the foundation for them to actually become leaders in the future, that foundation is maintained, that foundation is sustained, and the people who created it are rewarded and acknowledged for their service to this country. This bill will empower superannuitants and veteran pensioners to be independent, and I acknowledge that that's also been mirrored by both sides of the House. It enables them to get the benefits they deserve without having to deal with a process that creates confusion, delays, and loss of opportunities. The way this country treats our widows, veterans, and superannuitants is a reflection of how developed we are as a nation. Superannuitants and veterans pensioners should not be perceived as a burden on our society, rather a recognition to those who have helped create the foundation of this nation. So the foundation from which we have been fortunate enough to expand and also develop further as a nation. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about senior citizens who have worked hard and laid down infrastructures so that we could build a prosperous nation and establish and develop assets, not for the government to sell them off without people's permission. This bill will aim to offer superannuitants a no-muck-around approach and offer support to those living alone. The new single living alone rate of superannuation and veterans pension is intended to eliminate the requirement to make separate applications to receive full entitlement. And why should they have to be made to fill out extra forms and more applications? When I think of retirement, I think of a less busy life with the freedom to enjoy it without bureaucratic and bureaucracy and red tape. New Zealand First, I can hear you, Colin King. New Zealand First has raised concerns over the bill's capacity to benefit different living arrangements because our elderly are not uniform, nor do they all fit into one category. One of our main concerns, though, is that the bill's definition of dependent children who are 18 years of age and under. We still have those concerns. The government has failed to take this into consideration. Although the bill defines living alone as a person who occupies a principal place of residence of a specified kind and does not share that residence, I'm quoting that from the actual bill, there are expectations which are applicable to pensioners who live with a dependent child or person who is not financially independent and is attending an institution, educational institution that is. However, that exception will expire on December 31st on the same year when that dependent child has turned the age of 18. So as a common trend nowadays, most tertiary students begin university life at the age of 18. And none of the students are expected, or any undergrad degrees can expect to complete in 1 year. The minimum is normally 3 years. So during the committee stage of this bill, I raised a serious concern around this area. The way this part of the bill was written failed to accurately reflect the fact that undergraduate degree do take up to 3 years. So this collates to the years to which they will be considered dependent occupants. New Zealand First is very concerned with how these amendments may conflict with the dependent child's ability to get student allowance once he or she is assessed. And our concern is over the bill's potential to overlap with other entitlements that dependent students may be confronted with due to his or her living arrangements, which should be considerably important as well. This can become problematic if it is not carefully structured and may create more hassles for not only the dependent, but also the elderly citizens who live with them at the same place. If the intentions of this bill are true in wanting to make it easier for our elderly citizens to attain their rights and entitlements, then let's do it right. First time, every time. Let's do it right. Similarly, there needs to be greater clarity and informative measures that allow pensioners to gain greater understanding about the rights and entitlements. This responsibility should be placed on staff that administer these applications. Transparency and clear communications regarding the well-being of pensioners should be fostered with respect. New Zealand First would like this bill delivering a long-term scheme free from political tampering and based on principles of fairness. It must incorporate dignified living standards and represent our nation's national interest. It is predicted that in the next 30 years, 26% of the population will be over the age of 65, from 550,000 to well over 1 million. And New Zealanders will be receiving a form of retirement income. That's quite a high number of people. This bill should reflect that the government's intention for the future well-being of our elderly citizens. All New Zealanders matter, and we should not have to pull out statistics. We shouldn't have to look at statistics to remind us of that. This bill must ensure that our pensioners and superannuitants received what is owed to them. The success of this bill will also rely on its ability to correspond to the success of the Super Gold Card scheme. It is no secret that the Super Gold Card scheme is now revolutionising the way our pensioners and superannuitants live. So to recap on the success of the Super Gold Card, its initiation into society has been proven beneficial amongst the holders, especially through travels on public transport. New Zealand First encourages greater entitlements in this area, maybe through their powers, foods, health, and rates in general. And I can see that Mike Zapin is looking a little bit confused. So this will enable pensioners and superannuitants to enjoy a more dignified life, something that the national government often overlooks. It will also signal to the rest of the world that this government is actually doing something right. So we owe it to our pensioners and superannuitants to make life easier. And Mr. Speaker, it's time. It's time for us to acknowledge our senior citizens. They need us at this time, and what better way to respond and say thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.